You look at the world's view of fatherhood.
All right.
And I tell you, if you keep watching that station, it's a dim picture. It's a bleak picture. This is the world's view of fatherhood. This is the world's view. We have deadbeat dads. Those are the kind of men, they just do not care. You have fathered a child. You have brought life into the world, but you just do not care about that young man or young woman, that boy or girl that you helped bring into the world. And so they are known as deadbeats. Not only that, we have fathers who are absentee type fathers, who are never around, never in the picture, never spend any time with their children. They're just absent. As a matter of fact, you remember years ago, the Temptations had a song talking about the fact that Papa was a Rolling Stone. You ever paid attention to the lyrics of that song? That is the epitome of an absent father. Wherever he laid his hat was his home, and all he ever left us was alone. An absent father. And then we have abusive fathers, whether verbal, whether emotionally, whether sexually, whether physically. These are men who have children, but they abuse them in different shapes, form, or fashion. Here's the case. Children are people.
That's right.
They ought to be respected as such. In Psalm 127, the psalmist says, children are an heritage from the Lord. And so children are a gift from God. They ought to be treated as such. Yeah. We need not to abuse them verbally, talk down to them, try to diminish them and try to sexually abuse them. They are people just like we are people.
Yeah.
You realize sometimes fathers, we can be so detrimental to a child's development and maturation.
Yeah.
That's why Paul says, and ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. And in other words, we can't abuse our children. And then you have detached fathers. That's a different kind of area than we're used to. That means there's a father, he's in the picture.
Yeah.
He's in the house. He pays the bill. He supports everything. He provides everything. But when it comes down to emotional support, when it comes down to homework, when it comes down to being with the child, quality time, he just is detached. And so we see all these different viewpoints about the world's view of father. I believe that when we see God in Scripture, God is our Heavenly Father. And if we're going to honor men who are fathers, we ought to have fathers like God. Fathers who are like God. In our text, Psalm 103, notice what it said. Notice the analogy, the comparison that is made. Psalm 103. Psalm 103. Notice what the psalmist says in Psalm 103 and verse number 8. The Lord is merciful and gracious. He's slow to anger and plenteous in mercy. He will not always chide, neither will he keep his anger forever. God had not dealt with us after our sins, nor rewarded us according to our iniquities. For as the heaven is high above the earth, so great is his mercy toward them that fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far hath he removed our transgression from us. Like as a father pitieth his children, so the Lord pitieth them that fear him. We're talking about fathers like God. This morning, when you think about God as our Heavenly Father, three things ought to stand out. God cares for his children. God is concerned about his children. And then God corrects his children. And then if we think about it, if we're going to be fathers, we ought to care for our children. We ought to be concerned about our children, and we ought to correct our children. We are talking about fathers like God. First of all, God cares for his children. Christians are the children of God. John chapter 1 and verse number 11, the Bible says, he came unto his own, and his own received him not. But to many as received him, to them gave he power to be the sons of God. When you receive Jesus, and you accept Jesus, and you obey Jesus, and you call upon Jesus, God will adopt you into his family. It's a wonderful thing to be called a child of God.
Amen.
So we are his children. We are kings and sons of the Most High God. Well, look at 1 John chapter 3. 1 John chapter 3, this is the same John who writes John chapter 1 and verse number 11. John says it with a little bit stronger emphasis in 1 John chapter 3 and verse number 1. Behold, what does he say there?
What manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God.
John says, contemplate for just a minute. Behold, the manner of love that the Father had bestowed upon us that we should be called his sons. Nobody in this room was worthy for God to adopt him into his family. See, here's the thing about adoption. When people adopt, that means somebody wanted you. God adopted us into his family, and so God wanted us. He wanted to reconcile us back to him. He wanted to forgive us. He wanted to save us. He wanted to clean us up. God wanted us. And so we're his children. Behold, what manner of love the Father has bestowed upon us that we should be called the sons of God. What does he say?
Therefore the world knew us not, because it knew him not.
What does he say next?
Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it does not yet appear what we shall be.
Does it register in your mind from John's writing? Without a shadow of a doubt. We're God's children. The thing about it, God claims us as his. You know, some of you ain't got children, they want to claim them. I don't know them. That's not my son. That's not my daughter. He looked just like you. She looked just like you. He talked like you. She sounded like you. I mean, y'all could go for twins. And then somebody said, that's not my child. That's not my son. God wants to claim us. Behold, what manner of love the Father has bestowed upon us that we should be the sons of God. God wanted us, and God is not afraid to claim us as his children. Our Heavenly Father cares for us. Look at 1 Peter chapter 5. 1 Peter chapter 5. This is a wonderful thing about God. Did you know God cares for you? 1 Peter chapter 5, verse number 6. Look what it says. 1 Peter chapter 5.
Humble yourself, therefore, under the mighty hands of God, that he may exalt you in due time. Casting all your cares upon him.
Notice what Peter says.
For he cares for you.
Casting all our cares upon God, for he cares for us. We're talking about being like God. We're talking about fathers who are like God. Did you know God cares for us? He cares for his children. You go into the hospital sometime, and they take you up to the 3rd floor. It's known as the ICU, intensive care unit. Well, when it comes down to God's children, God has intensive care for his children. Casting all your cares upon him, for he careth for us. God has an emotional care for us. God has a loving care for us. God has a long-suffering care for us. God has a merciful care for us. God cares for us. Not only that, when you think about it, God always going to do right by us. You know why? Because he cares about us. Sometimes, you know, you think about people being sick, you think about people going into the hospital. Sometimes people don't visit them. Sometimes people don't call. Sometimes people don't text. They're sitting in the hospital 2 or 3 weeks, haven't heard from anybody. And then when somebody finally shows up to see them, the first thing they say, I thought nobody cared about me. And here it is, here God, he blesses us, he protects us, he provides for us, he forgives us, he answers all of our prayers, and God shows us repeatedly that he cares for us. Go back to our text, Psalm 103, verse number 13. Psalm 103 and verse number 13. The psalmist says, like as a father pitieth his children. A father is supposed to have mercy and compassion on his children or his child. A couple of months ago, one of the stories that circulated the internet was a very encouraging story. The story is told about a little girl in kindergarten. Little girl in kindergarten, she's 5 years old. She's in elementary school. She's in kindergarten. She wets her pants. She wets her pants. They call the father. The father is the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. He got to take time off his job. He got to come down to the school. The mother can't do what she's at work. You know what he does? He goes home. He takes his suit off. He puts on some blue jeans, and he pours a big old pot of water on his pants. He goes up to the school, he's standing in the office, his pants just as wet just like his daughter, and everybody started taking pictures. You know why he did that? Because he did not want his daughter to feel the embarrassment and the humiliation like she would have, everybody would have laughed at her. So both the father and the daughter walking out to school, her pants wet, his pants wet. He could have gone to the school and just chided her and talked about, you know what, you 5 years old, you shouldn't be wetting your pants, you in school now. No, he didn't do that. He went to the school with wet pants like she had them. Fathers got to be compassionate. You can't always bark at your children. It always seems like it's the father fussing and barking and talking. Every time you turn around, you on the phone. Who that is in the background? He fussing at these kids. You can't always fuss at them. You got to be understanding. You got to be compassionate. I know sometimes we just barking, but you know what? Children got to realize sometimes, you know what? We understand. You know what? We were children.
Yeah.
We made some mistakes. We broke some stuff. We put some holes in the wall. That's my brother. He's standing right there. We tore some stuff. We broke some stuff. We got in trouble. We said some bad words. We told some lies. We got in trouble. We chased girls. We did all that. And then now that you got children, all of a sudden that's supposed to stop. And they have not developed yet. Lord, we understand. We got to be pitiful. We got to be merciful. God understands. Look at the text. Look what he says. Verse number 10, Psalm 103. Verse number 9. He will not always try, neither will he keep his anger forever. You know, sometimes children, they can make fathers so mad. They can make them so mad, you bite your teeth, you walk out the house, you go to the store, you never come back. Children make you that mad. I can't believe he or she did it. But the question is, did you teach them not to? Because just like we get mad, we ought to understand, did we teach them not to do certain things? God does not always hold his anger forever. He has not given us after our sins, nor reward us according to our iniquities. You know what I understand about God as a father? God understands that sometimes his children mess up.
Amen.
They told us in school sometimes, God understands that his children sometimes soil their diapers. Don't they do that? For as the heaven is high above the earth, so great is his mercy toward them that fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far hath he removed our transgression from us. God understands and God cares for us, and God has compassion on us. So the Lord pitieth them that fear him. I just want us to be reminded of the fact that when we think about our Heavenly Father, he cares about us. He's concerned about us. And God knows what's best for us. Not only that, earthly fathers ought to care for their children. Look at 1 Timothy chapter 5. It is amazing when you think about the world in which we live today. So many fatherless homes. No care, no concern, no love from the male side of the family. 1 Timothy chapter 5. Paul says, but if any man provide not for his own, he is worse than an infidel and has denied the faith. What is Paul implying here? A man ought to take care of his children. Willingly.
Right.
A man ought to provide for his family willingly. Don't be like one man told me. One man told me this. I promise God of the truth. Him and his wife were going through a divorce. He tried to beat her to the punch. He goes down to the court, put himself on child support. He says, man, you know what? I done put myself on child support, so I already got that taken care of. Let me tell you this. Child support can take care of your child when he's sick. Child support can take care of your child when he's hurt in school. Child support can't read a bedtime story to your child. You got to provide some emotional stability for your child. You got to be there. Sometimes, let me tell you this sidebar. Sometimes you got to go on there with your big man pants on and talk to your child, have a face-to-face conversation. And sometimes with children, what we have to do, sometimes you got to be man enough as a husband, as a father, to apologize to your child. You got to be able to apologize. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean to say that. And so you got to understand, Paul said if a man provides not for his own family, he is worse than an infidel. I know he's talking about financial support there, but guess what? In order to do that, he got to be there. And so a man got to have enough care for his family, for his children, that he's going to provide financial support, emotional support, spiritual support, and you got to be there. Paul says you got to care that much for your child. It's amazing, the world in which we live, that men don't want to care for their children, take care of their children, dragging these women in and out of court for financial support, and then by the time they go to court, come to the realization you got 3 more other baby mamas, she ain't getting about $5 a month. That's amazing. When you the culprit. And so Paul says fathers got to provide for their families. Last year on the Y'all Evangelist show, they had a man that had about 30 kids. It's amazing. Let me tell you, hey, they got surgery for that, my friend. They got surgery for that. There's no way. Let's just be honest.